Windows 2000 and Exchange Server 2000, we had cluster service, which is Microsoft always sees. Like now, for example, Microsoft have seen that there is a big market for archiving and for all of things, so they did incorporate this in Exchange 2010. It's still a new technology. They don't. It's not really the best, but this is how they do it. So they saw people investing a lot in third-party clusters, so they stole the concept and they got it in Exchange in Windows Server 2000. So the way it was working at that time is, it's exactly like a virtual server staying on a VMware infrastructure, but it's not like that. So we have two Windows servers. They had to be identical, and they had to be certified by Microsoft. So it's not like you can grab any two servers and you would. They have to have been tested for cluster. And usually these are the high-end expensive ones. And you get SAN, and SAN at the time it was really expensive, so it was a big investment to get the SAN. And in the SAN, you have two storage areas. One for something called Quorum, and then you have the shared storage. So the Exchange server will, so let's say this is the virtual infrastructure. And this is going to be the virtual Exchange server. So let's say this is Exchange 1. This is the name of the server, of the node. They call this node, and this will be the cluster, which is a virtual machine. So this is Exchange 1, this is Exchange 2. And maybe I'll call this Exchange. So I will be defining for Exchange a couple of resources. So I'll give it an IP address, I'll give it a name, I'll give it a storage. All of these resources will be stored in the SAN. So if this Exchange, and let's say this is gonna be the active one. So as long as this is the active, this will be doing nothing. It's just staying there watching what's happening. And this will be running the virtual machine. So it will have its own IP address, but it will also have the IP address of the cluster. So if you ping the cluster, this one will answer, because it's hosting the virtual cluster. Now, this will be monitoring the quorum, this will be monitoring the quorum, and this will be monitoring also each other, which called heartbeat. So this server is always seeing, is the active one still on? If the active one is still goes off, if it can't reach the active one anymore, it will see, can I see the quorum? Because if it can't see a quorum, then the problem relies on the passive one, not in the active one. So if the active one dies, this one will not be able to see it again, but it will be able to see the quorum and the shared. So it will take over. So it will take the IP address, it will take the name, it will take everything, and this will be now the new Exchange server. So this is a nice fault tolerance for when it comes to hardware. If this server dies, of course we have two power supplies, we have redundant fans, we have two CPUs, all of these things. But worst comes to worst, the whole server dies or something goes really wrong, this one will take over. And this has been the de facto cluster for Exchange 2000 and 2003 for years. All companies invested thousands and thousands of dollars to do that. But there's only one problem. Anyone can know what's the problem in this configuration.
Stretching it between two sites.
That's a big problem, because if you have two data centers, you can't move this one here, because you can, but then you have to manage to get either access, quick access to the SAN. At the time it was not possible, or get a SAN that will be a snapshot of this. And this was extremely expensive. So there was data center, and people used to invest, like when you need, as I said, if you need 2% more and you're willing to pay $1 million, they'll do it for you. So the other problem is the shared storage. What happens if the SAN dies? I have two servers, and the SAN dies, the whole system dies. Now, SAN should not die, blah, blah, blah. Things happen. So, but people used to, this is the most they can get at the time, so they just did it, they paid the money, and they do. Another problem at the time was the way Exchange Server functioned. At the time, Exchange Server had only two roles. It has back end and front end. Backend is everything. So it's going to be hosting the mail server. It's going to be hosting the database. Clients will be connecting to it. Outlook Web Access, everything is hosted on the backend. The only function of the front end is having a buffer separating the bad guys who try to hack into your system from accessing your message. So if you have Outlook Web Access at the time, or if you want to send SMTP traffic from the internet, people have always to speak with proxy there. It's only proxy. So get the request, label it and send it back with its IP address. And this is a very interesting thing if you actually look into any front end, or in your case, if you look into the CAS server, you will find a lot of people trying to connect and trying to hack into your system every single minute in the day. And that will be in the event viewer as errors. And if you have, I know you have like some filtering device, it will be doing that for you. So you will have a second layer of protection, and you have firewall. But at the end of the day, the front end, if you kill the front end, nothing will die. It's all in the back end. So this made sense at the time because everything is on it, but it only provides hardware failure. And the way database worked at the time is, database is two parts. There's database and log files. So, sorry. At the time, they had something called storage groups. So like if I speak way too much and you don't understand, tell me so I go back and restate. So you can't have database separately. You have to have it inside the storage group. So you have DB1 and DB2, but they all share the log files. So the storage group, think of it, the log files, who are database need log files, but log files are being grouped into storage groups. So if these log files get corrupted, most probably these are going to get corrupted. And so this storage group was also tied to the server. So let's say you have two backend servers, not identical. You have two. So the cluster is Exchange 1. Let's say you have another cluster that's called Exchange 2. My mailbox resides on Exchange 2, and Trent's mailbox resides on Exchange 1. So if this dies, Trent will not be able to access his email. This one only knows where the email box is, but it does not have a copy of it. So again, you have one copy of the mailbox only on this server. You have nothing in here. And this is still the situation in 2007. So 2003 and 2007 still have the storage groups and the databases all attached to the server. What they done in Exchange 2007, they came with a new concept. And at the time, to get Trent's mailbox back, you have to create the same server with the same name, and to have a valid backup for it, and a valid backup of the Active Directory, because the configuration is all stored in the Active Directory. That's why it was really hard to restore a mailbox, because in 2000 you had to do it on the same server, and you can't do it on the same server because you will lose everything in the database. So you had to actually go to the lab and restore it in the lab, and it was a really complex issue. With Exchange Server 2003, they came out with the recovery storage groups. So in the same server, they give you a space to restore backup to a different place on the same server, and then pull the data from the mailbox. In Exchange Server 2007, they came with the concept that you can actually take the database, although it's still attached to the server, but you can strip the information and recover it in another server. It's not an easy. You have to go to the command line and you have to have done it before, or it will take time for you to learn.